Hello, everybody. Here we are again in another episode of InterAction. You know, our DNA is all about action. We have action even in the name. Uh, Today's guest is an amazing director, producer. He is all over the place when we are discussing films, especially action films. And he has this international background. And of course, all of you, I am sure, as you are going to find out here, I'm sure you know lots of pieces of his work that he's been doing during the years. His name is Luis Llosa, but for his close friends, everybody calls him Lucho. So director, producer, and many other talents. Welcome to our show, Lucho. How are you, my friend?
Thank you, Daniel. Pleasure to be with you and your listeners, your viewers. Um, I'm here in Lima. I guess you're in Washington now.
Yes.
So good to see you.
Good to see you too. It's very interesting, Lucho, because our time zone is the same. Our team in Brazil, I think they are at the moment 2 hours ahead, but I never figured out, maybe because of my Brazilian background, our time zones would be very, very distant. But no, this is the same time zone. This is amazing.
Yes, it helps. It helps certainly. Yes.
Yes, yes, of course. Lucho, I would love to discuss with you many things from your career, but one of the things that I'm happy that has happened to me is that I had the opportunity of working with you. And you are not just the average Joe. You have worked with many interesting people in the film industry. And I know you have a very nice transition into the entertainment world in general, branching out even to sports events. Anyway, you have worked with Jennifer Lopez. You have worked with Eric Roberts, Sylvester Stallone, John Voight, only powerful names in the industry. And you seem to be a very down-to-earth guy. You are very nice to work with. You tend to be cool all the time. And this is my first question. How do you keep cool even when you see the world around you burning? Because it's very difficult dealing with this enormous logistics operation in film and entertainment in general. How do you keep cool?
Well, I guess a lot of it has to do with all the years that I have in show business, and I say show business in general because it's beyond just film direction. I have a company in Peru, Iguana Films, that does television. I've done series, I've done soap operas, I've done action cap shows. We've done events. So yes, we are kind of all over the place in the sense that my company has to do with show business in general, and my life is very related to show business. I was not always like this. I started being very, very temperamental as a young guy. I don't think I've lost the passion, but as a young guy, you want things to happen in that very second. You get, mad very easily. I remember Roger Corman, who is a legend in filmmaking because he has given opportunities to a lot of people. He gave me my first break to direct in English, and that was the beginning of my career directing films in Hollywood. The Roger Corman has given first opportunities to Coppola, to Scorsese, Nicholson, you name it. And he came down to Lima when we were shooting our first film together. It was an action film with Robert Vaughn, the famous actor from Man from Uncle, and Eric Estrada, the actor from Chip. And
Yes.
there was a moment when I couldn't communicate with the helicopter that was on top of us, with one cameraman that was there, and out of my frustration, something happened with the walkie-talkie. I just threw it on the floor, and later that night, his wife told me, this is the guy that we need to make films with. The fact that I had been very involved, very passionate, and I went as far as throwing a walkie-talkie meant something to him. But that's just to give you an example of my involvement and how I have changed. I think that today, with so many hours of flight, so to speak,
Yes.
I think that is crucial to create. Sorry, it's crucial to create.
Let me ask you, Lucho, can you
Yes.
move a bit to the center of the frame?
Oh yes, of course.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. No, that's good.
Okay, so it's a process in your life. I think that as important as having ratings in a TV show, as important as having great box office or ratings in a platform, I think that to me, to create a great atmosphere of work is something, like I say, an achievement as important as that, because you wake up to do what you love to do in life. So you better have a great time in those 12 or 14 hours sometimes that you work. And it a lot of that depends on your leadership. A lot of that depends on how people feel. You create a family, you create, good conditions, to have humor, to have, a very relaxed atmosphere. Doesn't mean that you're not going to, ask from everybody to do their best job, to be extremely involved, to be very sharp and accurate, and to be very focused, because you
Yes.
cannot lose focus. That's a crucial work in filmmaking, to really focus and never forget that you are on a set to say action. And for that to happen, everybody has to do their jobs. Everybody has to be, really concentrated in what the next shot is going to be.
Yes, this is very interesting. But for example, once I heard this sentence about Steve McQueen. You can't be hot all the time, but you can always be cool. And I'm jumping ahead here because this is one of my questions that I had reserved, which is, how do you make people, and I know you do that in a nice way, but what is your technique when you are working with like people that are very recognized worldwide, so they have their the size of their egos sometimes is big. How do you make them check their egos at the door in a studio or in a location? Do you have a technique, or you just go with the flow and bring them into the mood? How do you do that?
I think that the secret, wherever, Daniel, is to be prepared. I think that every actor, every actress, no matter how famous they are, they want to be directed. They want to go on the set and have the person who is in charge of the picture, to be clear about what he wants. Also, to be open to listen to their ideas. You cannot be a dictator. But I think that the secret to deal with those egos is that they see in front somebody who is in charge, somebody who gives them the latitude, to interact with their ideas, to listen to their opinions. After all, it's their faces that are going to be on the screen. But I think that the basic premise is that they should see a director who is prepared. And that's what I do, especially with those egos. When I directed the specialist, you're mentioning all those, very, very famous actors. I remember I was waiting to see Terry Samuel, who is the head of Warner Brothers. I was with my producer, with Jerry Weintraub, and a very famous actor came out, had been in a meeting, and Weintraub introduced me to him, and he said he's going to direct the specialist, and he said, "Oh, you're the one who's going to be in that lion's cage. Good, good luck, good luck." I got a little nervous about that comment, but I had very clear in my mind that I was going to confront, I was going to be facing these extremely famous people with big egos, and all of them with careers that are famous for being conflicting, for being difficult, because
Mhm.
Eric Roberts, Stallone, Rod Steiger, Jimmy Woods, all of them had this, you know, reputations of being extremely difficult people.
Mhm.
So I had that very clear, and I said the moment that I go into that set, I should be, really leading the show, because otherwise I'm going to be rolled over.
Yes.
With If they saw a director that was insecure, that was not clear about what had to be done, it was very dangerous, because then you end up being just smashed all over the place. I had gone to every location like 4 times with my DP, with the assistant director. I had gone on my own several times to design the shots, so I was prepared. I insist that even though you're prepared and you have a clear idea of what you want, you have to be open to what they have to say, because you may have in your mind a certain blocking of a scene. If the actor is in extreme conflict with that blocking, you have to be flexible. You have to be flexible, but to start with, they have to see they have to see a director that has already a route, that already has an idea of what he wants. I've heard of directors that go to the set on the contrary, because they go unprepared, because they want to be very spontaneous. They want to be extremely, you know, open to everything. They kind of invent on the run. They want to have the feeling of the actors. They want to have the feeling. That's not my case. That's not my case. And especially being a Peruvian director, uh, facing for the first time egos like the ones I faced, you better be prepared.
Yes, very interesting. You mentioned the locations because I made a video a few months ago. I was in Miami at the time. And then I said, I have to use the opportunity that I'm here. And then I started visiting some of the locations that you picked. And if I am not mistaken, your DP was Jeffrey Kimball, who is a
Yes.
very, right? He's a very famous DP, Top Gun, many other films. And at that time of the specialist, I remember an interview. Jeffrey was discussing, we try to use a lot of natural light from the city. So I visited some of the locations, and I put on I broadcast the video on my YouTube channel. It's the special visiting the locations of the specialist, and very interesting. And visiting the locations, I can tell that there was a decent amount of preparation to find these places and finding the right spot to showcase not just the story but the environment in general of the city. And that was very cool. I loved the mood that you set in this film specifically.
When you direct films and then you have reviews, the famous reviews, you have mixed bag. Somebody loves the movie, somebody hates the movie. There was one critic that was very critical of the movie, but he said, never has been Miami better photographed.
Yes, exactly. The neon at night, it was really cool. Lucho, you mentioned that you come prepared, and of course, you are open to ideas. And we mentioned here Eric Roberts, and I have worked with Eric Roberts before. I had never seen an actor doing what he did on set. He was being directed, but he was very aware of. He was always asking. Very professional, very prepared guy, and he was asking the camera guys which lens they were using, because depending on the lens, he would give the director a better facial expression if he knew he would be like on a close-up, or he would give something more physical if it was a wider angle. So without losing the continuity of the film. So I thought that was amazing as an actor. So my question to you is the following. How much input do you get from the actors? How much preparation do you like the actors to have? Or you prefer that they come fresh just with the script in mind, and then you twist and mold whatever you have in mind? What's your technique on this case? Do you like to direct actors?
Well, basically, yes. I mean, I think that a great communication with an actor is going to reflect on the screen. Uh, I didn't have a great relationship with Sharon Stone, because quite the opposite to the other actors in the movie, she resented the fact that I went to the set with a very clear idea of what I wanted. She wanted to call the shots.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of cases, her shots were in conflict with what I wanted. In a lot of cases, were not just right; they were not right, and we had this friction. We had this friction that I didn't have with any one of the other actors. A guy like Eric Roberts that you mentioned is a guy that has a reputation for being extremely difficult. He wasn't with me, maybe because he saw that everything was flowing, that everything. The only problem I had with him and Jimmy Woods, and this is funny, the only problem I had is that both on their close-ups, when I had a give and take, a shot and a reverse, both of them wanted to be photographed from the same side of the face.
Oh,
I cannot do that, because if I'm doing a dialogue with you, I'm going to photograph your left side and I'm going to photograph my right side.
yes.
So, and we had like a problem there. So I ended up doing something like with little kids. I said, one for each. In one scene, I photograph you. This is the side that you want. And in the other scene, I'll angle the camera so that you have your privileged side facing the camera. But I mean, it was an exception, because otherwise, they were all, including the Stallone. Stallone was a good soldier. You know that normally in every Stallone movie, except in this one, in every Stallone movie, up to that point, the budget almost doubled and the schedule almost doubled. In this case, we went back to Los Angeles, to Warner Brothers, on time and on schedule, which was unheard of. It's true that I had a very strong producer. Jerry Weintraub said, I want to deliver the film on time and on budget. I said, Jerry, I'm prepared for that. I've done a lot of television. I know how to, manage my time on the set, how to basically privilege the shots that I need versus the shots that are just going to be like, a plus to the scene. I think I know how to manage my time, but the only condition I give you is that you put me the actors on the set on time. I don't want to have everybody ready and the actress is in makeup or the actor is not ready. So he went as far on this deal. I basically fulfilled my side of the deal, and he did also. And he went as far sometimes to be in the middle. Let's say Entertainment Tonight was interviewing Sharon Stone. He would get in the middle between the camera and Sharon Stone to say, Miss Stone, the director is waiting for you.
Okay. Yeah.
So I had the actors. That was the premise that I needed to work with to really deliver the film on time and on budget. Obviously, this goes through a DP that understands that commitment too, and a first assistant director that really has to run the show like a general, So it's a teamwork. But I think it all starts with a director having clear what has to be accomplished during the day, vis-a-vis the shots that he has in his mind, the shot that he has planned, with the team, of course.
Hey Lucho, do you have storyboards for the film, or you just use the script?
Uh, on action scenes, uh, you need storyboards. On action scenes, it's important to have storyboards. If you're going to have a chase, if you're going to have a complicated action scene, I think that you need to have a storyboard. Otherwise, I don't work with the storyboards. I wish I knew how to draw, because
Yeah, just like me.
I go to a location on my own to design, and I wish I had the minimum ability to at least sketch what the shot is going to be. But I have a brain problem, because when I want to draw a cat, I do a table,
Yeah.
so
I know the drill. I have the same feeling, but you know what? There are a few apps now that you can do that. So you just take your iPhone download this app, and then you photograph the place, and you have some templates that you can do that nowadays.
see, I'm not a techie guy. You're giving me news, and certainly it's going to be useful.
Oh, that's for sure.
What we just shot recently, I took with me the storyboard guy, and there were two very complicated action scenes that we had storyboards for.
Yes, but even with the app, it's amazing because you have the real place and you have templates, and then you can size them according to what you want. You have like templates of cameras that you can point in the direction that you want. But I think storyboarding is also an art, and it's part of making films. I wouldn't, if you have the opportunity to have like someone to sketch for you, I would do the same. You mentioned time and of course budget, and they are closely related. And you seem to be a very experienced guy in filming in the jungle. For example, The Specialist is extremely urban. It's a very urban film, but you have The Sniper, you have Anaconda, you have other films that you filmed in the jungle. How do you deal with the setbacks that you have when you count, for example, on weather, and there is nothing else in a jungle film? I mean, you don't have indoors. How do you do that to keep the schedule and to keep progressing with the film?
Well, the first thing is that I have to deal with my wife, because when I come home saying I'm going to do this film, she says, "Oh, not again in a jungle, please." But anyway, I don't feel uncomfortable in a jungle. I like it may sound strange, but somehow in a jungle you have not a lot of places where you can see. That helps you be very focused. I think there's a mystery, there's a magic in the jungle that somehow works in your favor if you want to create a certain tone, if you want to create. I don't mind the heat. I spend a lot of my time. I'm almost living now in Dominican Republic, which is a tropical place. Um, I don't mind jungles. There's people. Anaconda was a case where some of the actors were terrified of the jungle. Jennifer Lopez was terrified of mosquitoes. Imagine when I had to ask her to go in the water at the Rio Negro, So, but I don't see. I feel comfortable. For some reason I feel at home in the jungle, and like I say, it gives you already this rich, vegetation and complexity. Somehow already lends to the film a visual richness. Yes.
Very interesting. You mentioned Rio Negro. How much do you know about Brazil, Lucho? I mean, are you very familiar with the country? Because probably you have visited places in Brazil while filming that the most part of Brazilians have never been able to visit, which is the rainforest. The people tend to be in the southeast or on the coast of Brazil in the Atlantic Ocean. Uh, Tell us a little bit of what you know about Brazil, or about this part of Brazil that many Brazilians don't know.
Well, I as far as Anaconda goes, I was basically based. I did some some scouting in other places in the jungle, but Manaus made a lot of sense. I tried to shoot the film in Peru, but we didn't have the facilities. We didn't have a great hotel like the Manaus Tropical that had the 300 rooms. It had suites. The hotels in our Amazon jungle didn't have suites, and by contract you have to provide suites to certain team members and to the actors. So we went to Brazil, and the other advantage is that in Brazil you have great crews. You have, for all the local help, for all the technical, the equipment, and we took some equipment from obviously from Hollywood, from LA, but Brazil is a country that has an ongoing industry, very good professionals. I had a friend that had worked with me long time ago in a freaking film. His name is Roberto Bacher. I've not been in touch with him, but he was my contact when I wanted to scout Brazil. I contacted him, and he worked part of the time in the film. So, but there's another source for me to know about Brazil aside from having visited as a tourist, Rio, for instance. The other source was that, if you recall, Vargas Llosa,
Yes.
my cousin, wrote a novel. First, it was a script. That later, the film was not made with Rui Guerra. I met Rui Guerra, that I admire a lot. We worked in Dominican Republic in an experience. We went as far as building sets. The premise was very crazy, to have in a tropical country try to stage this Osertao, Canudos,
Okay.
But what we did, for instance, to build a train station, what we did is we cut out the sugarcane plantation field. The railroad was already there, but so we had to cut it out to start making it look like Brazil, because it was an experience that Paramount Pictures wanted to do. Then the film got to spend too much money. The production went up. And Barry Diller, who just had been named president of Paramount Pictures, said this film doesn't have all the commercial potential that we want for a film that is getting this expensive. So it got canceled. But later, Mario wrote a novel called The War of the End of the World, La Guerra del Fin del Mundo, which is about Canudos, and the descriptions that you have there of all the Sertao, all the story of the Consejero, was very, very fascinating to read. There's this famous book called Osertao. So I had this knowledge of the country aside, like I said, from being a tourist, from having been in the carnival one or two times in Rio. But for Anaconda, we were based basically in Manaus. We shot part of the film in Manaus and part of the shoot of the film in Los Angeles. There's a big park called the Arboretum that has this lake and a lot of vegetation. The problem was that in the night scenes, we had the problem that I had to cut the shot several times, because quite close to this fantastic set was a racetrack.
Oh,
and
the noise.
And in the middle of the night, when John Boyd, was trying to catch this huge anaconda, we were listening to the horse track, narrator through the loudspeakers. So I had to shout, cut. But Manaus was a great experience vis-a-vis the locations that were fantastic, vis-a-vis the Brazilian crew that I had. It was a great experience, yes.
Very nice. You mentioned your cousin, and I think you also directed or produced a documentary about him or about one of his works. Is this the film you're talking about? No.
No, he wrote another novel called The Feast of the Goat, La Fiesta del Chivo, that was
Oh,
about
that's right.
Trujillo, the Dominican dictator. I was very familiar with Dominican Republic, so that was a must for me. I bought the rights without him knowing about it, uh, uh, to shoot the film, and we shot the film partially in Dominican, and then we shot it in Spain. It was a co-production between England and Spain, but obviously we had to shoot in Dominican Republic. We shot in the National Palace, so on and so forth. Um, that's a movie that we made with Isabella Rossellini. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, you mentioned your cousin, and now I'm going to mention your son, who is also an artist, Sebastian. I have met Sebastian. He's an actor, he is a singer, and we can tell that the artistic blood runs strong in the family. But I have a question. Do you think somehow your career influenced Sebastian to also enter the entertainment industry? Or no, there is no relation. It's just a coincidence.
No. It's no coincidence. It's an interesting story because my wife is a very well-known singer here. She has always collaborated with me. She's a singer. I'm a film director. So I have a daughter from my first marriage, but the two sons that I have with my current wife, Sebastian and Mateo, who is slightly younger, both of them started, well, they got familiar with show business since very little because they would go to sets or they would go to concerts that her mother gave. So their life had been the show business, but they went a different route. Both of them graduated from Yale University, one in economics and the other one in EPE, which is ethics, politics, and economics. Fast forward, the one that graduated in economics, Sebastian, is a singer and an actor, but basically he's a musician. Basically, his vocation is to compose and to sing, and he acts kind of on the side to make ends meet. And Mateo is now, he wants to make films, but for the time being, he's a commercials director, a TV spots, commercial spots director.
Well,
And
he's smart. He's very smart because there is a huge market in this area, and then he's going to have like the freedom to pick the projects that are close to his heart. At least he has a regular income.
It's a for me, television was a great exercise. For him, directing commercials is being a great exercise. He's a film buff. He's very, very sophisticated in what he sees in films. But he's working on commercials, and it's interesting for me because I only directed one commercial in my life. Was quite successful a long time ago when I was very young, and then I was lucky because I was able to work on television, then on films. For the time being, he's directing commercials as a scale, as part of the chain to one day direct films. But
Yeah,
obviously, it had to do with the fact that myself and my wife were in the show business, that it was in the DNA.
yeah. It was just a stepping stone, but for him, it's like the film school, and you got to tell a story really quick, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. Well, since we are talking about TV, there was already a rise of streaming platforms, but with the pandemic, the movie theaters were hit real hard. I think things are going back to normal now. And since you have a lot of experience on television too, soap operas and series, how do you see the future of cinema? Do you think, I have read these days that the movie theater films are going to be kind of reserved for blockbusters because of the whole production and the costs and distribution. And it's easier nowadays. For example, if you have your film on Netflix, you have your product on 200 countries at the same time and with very limited costs. How do you see the rise of streaming and the impact on the film industry regarding movie theaters. What do you think?
Well, there's two different factors, Daniel, that you have to bear in mind. Two different factors. One was before the pandemic and after the pandemic. The one before, the factor that streaming supposedly was going to start engulfing movie theater going, big screen films, was not true. People saw films in Netflix. People started seeing scenes on television that they liked, and the streaming, and the audiences started growing even more in theaters. It is true. It is true that mostly for blockbusters, but the premise that the streaming or television or cable at a certain time was going to destroy movie going basically didn't happen. It was quite the opposite. There was a time when the fact that they saw good stuff on their houses may motivated even people even more to go to theaters, because the social aspect of theaters, the popcorn, the girl that you buy, you go with your friends, you go out, then you go to dinner. It's part of our culture. It's part of our civilization. I think that's not going to disappear, except for the fact that we have a pandemia that prevents people from being in a closed place. But once pandemia goes away, I'm absolutely convinced that that the movie theater assistance, movie theater going, is going to go back. It's going to go back and going to start growing again. But it's true. It's true that film costs have gone really up, and for movie theaters, it's mostly blockbusters. But that was something that was happening aside from streaming. Anyhow, aside from streaming, that was just the nature that cost started going very, very high, and prices went up because people were going a lot to the movies. The actors knew that, the teams knew that they were in great demand. So the agents would say, if you are in great demand, let's raise salaries and all of that. And that's why it has become, and also the fact that current films have a lot of visuals that are very expensive, have a lot of the action films that you see rely a lot in very complicated visual effects that are very expensive. That's why costs have gone up. And if you have a little film, unless you are a very well-known author, filmmaker, it's very difficult to compete. So streaming, I think, is a very good alternative. Even though the Netflix of this world, or Amazon and whatnot, are very demanding on how on the technical aspect. You cannot deliver something that is not technically really impeccable, otherwise they won't buy it.
Yes, impeccable. But do you think, for example, now we have more avenues of distribution, more options? If you create this impeccable work, what advice would you give to aspiring filmmakers, for example? Because you have more avenues, it's easier in a way to produce something. It's not that expensive to produce a film as it used to be with the film, the película, right? And now with a cell phone, you can film in 4K. Of course, it's not going to be the same thing as if you have like top-notch equipment, a red camera, and lots of, your budget is really big. But what advice would you give to aspiring filmmakers if they want to create like a nice product and be displayed on streaming or trying something in a movie theater?
Well, filmmaking, unless you are a very exceptional filmmaker that is offering a very original story and all that, is always a process. My advice always is to start doing something. You have even with your telephone camera, you can create something. You have to have samples. You have to have, to start knocking on doors, you have to have things to show. So it is an advantage nowadays that you can have, a telephone camera, or get a hold of a camera very cheaply to shoot, in a non-professional way yet, but that becomes a card of presentation. You have to have, first of all, a story to tell, because you're not going to impress anybody just by technical pyrotechnics. You have to have a story to tell, even if it's a short film, even whatever you do to show, you have to have a story to tell. And then, just get a camera, no matter how, get your family to lend you a little bit of money, let your friends be the actors, whatever, put something on screen that becomes your card of presentation. That's the advice I have to give young people, because otherwise you don't exist. Otherwise you're just, a possibility. You may be a nice guy, you may be a good pitcher, a good guy to give a pitch, but I think that if you show something, you are miles ahead.
Yes, I remember one conversation that we had in Lima a few years ago. Is that the first thing I asked you? Hey, how do you pick a script? What do you do? How do you pick your films? And this is exactly what you told me. You said, first of all, you need a very good story, and then we start from there. And talking about the screenplay and the good story, what is your process? Do you like to have an outline with a very defined story, and from the outline you jump into the script, or you just boom, have a script and start your work from the script itself?
No, I have a basic idea, and the first thing I do is a skeleton, a storyline. It's crucial for me to have an idea where I'm starting from and where I'm going to. It's very very important to have this storyline, this outline, 1, 2, 3, 4, that basically gives me an idea of the narrative, and then I start writing either myself or I give it to a writer. But it's crucial to have this first sense of a route of where the film is going. Along the way, you change things, you add things, of course, but yes, I need the most important thing to start a project is to have this kind of basic outline of the entire narrative. It's crucial for me.
Yes, well, I'm going to be very specific because I know some of our viewers are going to love this information. What's the length, or how long do you think this outline should be? I mean, how accurate it should be? Because should it have like 10 pages, 30 pages, 50 pages? What's your ideal number?
You're talking about, Daniel, you're talking about a treatment.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily do a treatment. I do a treatment only if I'm going to pitch it to a studio, if I'm going to pitch it. But basically, when I do my stuff, I do just one-liners.
Oh, like bullet points.
Exactly. Just one-liners, scene one, so on and so forth. Scene two, So I just do, that's why I call it a skeleton. It's
Mm.
not, it's not necessarily a treatment. In any case, to do a treatment, it would also be necessary to have this skeleton. Sometimes, when I have to pitch, yes, I ask a writer. I have people that work with me to transform this basic idea that is a step outline. Each scene is one liner. I give it to them. We discuss it, and they kind of write it in treatment form, or we just go to a script. During pandemia, I spent like 5 months alone. I have a beach place in Dominican Republic. I couldn't move because all the airports were closed. So I wrote a couple of scripts, and in that case, I did dialogue. Or I did them myself. I did to start with, I wrote this basic outline, and then I started writing. And the lens changes a lot, because as you go, you start inventing more things, you cut scenes, you add, but you already have a sense of when you need to go into the third act. It's not dictated necessarily by the time, it's dictated organically, but by the story itself, when you think you have to resolve all the mystery, all the suspense, all the curiosity that you have been developing.
Very nice. So it's pretty much, usually when I write a script, I buy one of those file folders. They are like an accordion, and I select each space and I put just the headline of the scene, the idea of the scene, and then I start filling out this accordion with the scenes and the themes, and and then the action progresses. You pretty much do the same thing. It's an accordion.
Exactly. I mean, the format may change. You call it an accordion. In my case, is basically just pages of a block that I have, and that I feel once the lines end, I have to go to page 2 and page 3 in a very simple, elementary way. I do it myself, and then sometimes I pass all that into a computer. But basically, I start writing it. I prefer the very first work I do is on paper with a pen, and then I pass it on to a computer to give it to my writers.
Legal pads, right? The famous legal pads.
That's it. Legal pads. Yeah. Those yellow ones are part of my life. Yes.
Yeah, I know the drill. Very nice. Lucho, I have a question. And I remember we had this conversation when you mentioned Roger Corman. How did you get to meet him? And do you think there are people like him nowadays, like open to give an opportunity to new directors, actors in the industry?
Well, in my case, it was really, I got really lucky, because every place in the world, especially at the time, we're talking about at least 30 years ago, every place in the world, when people wanted to start making films, you always thought of Roger Corman, because Roger Corman was like a legend who had given, like I said, first opportunities to a lot of people in the industry, a lot of people, of actors and directors, because he was very prolific. He used to produce a lot of movies. So he gave to these movies first-time opportunities to first-time directors, And one day I was producing a TV show in Lima, and the owner of the channel said, I got a call from a girl that used to work in sales in the channel. She was living in Los Angeles, and she represented the channel in Peru to sell product. And she had met Roger Corman, and she showed him a cup show, an action cup show that I was producing. At the time, I used to say it was like a Peruvian Kojak, the famous Telly Savalas character. I had a TV show that was a cup show with a lot of Peruvian flavor. We used to say it was a cup show with a lot of ceviche, So this girl had, as part of her portfolio to sell, she had some episodes of this show that was called Gamboa. Gamboa was the name of the lead captain, that was the head of the protagonist, Lieutenant Gamboa, Captain Gamboa. So she went to visit this guy who used to buy product and sell product, because both, and she showed him a couple of episodes of Gamboa, and he got interested. He said, where has this been produced? She said, well, in Peru, in Lima, in our TV channel. At the time, he used to produce films in Argentina a lot. So she said, On my next trip to Argentina, I want to stop by in Peru, meet the producer, director of this TV show, and see what comes out. So the owner of the channel says, Lucho, Livia, that was her name, has called me that somebody called Roger Corman wants to come down to explore movie production possibilities. I said, "Are you joking? Are you talking about Roger Corman?" He said, "Yeah, well, I own a TV channel, but movie making is not my thing. I know you want to be a filmmaker, so I pass on to you this contact." I said, "No kidding." So Roger Corman went to Lima and found me. Instead of me knocking on his door, I was so lucky that Roger Corman went to Lima. I took him to where we were shooting this TV series in a very rough way. I had to do a stunt moment. There's a guy that has to jump from a small roof onto the floor. We put this cushion. We did it in a very rough way, but he loved that. He loved the fact that we were doing this in a very passionate way. So then I took him to my house and I showed him not one, but like 10 episodes of Gamboa's, And right there on the spot, he said, "I want you to produce and direct a movie for me." I said, "Why not?" And this is interesting because he said, "I'll have an idea for you." I had told him that I had been invited to Japan to do a documentary called A Latin American's View of Today's Japan. I was invited for 30 days to Tokyo, where I had to write a script, direct, film, and edit in 30 days a film. But that was the challenge. So I said, yes, I have to stop one night in Los Angeles on my way to Tokyo. He said, okay, when you go to Los Angeles, I'll have somebody go to your hotel with an idea. So this somebody went to the hotel with a basic idea. The basic idea was kind of a ripoff of The Day of the Jackal.
Okay.
Except that it was a Latin American president in this country called San Pedro, which we used later on a lot. San Pedro is a country that has had more revolutions, earthquakes, you name it, because in a lot of our movies, San Pedro was the imaginary country where all these crazy things happen. So the president of San Pedro was going to be, there was going to be an attentat, against him. So kind of in the line of The Day of the Jackal, he said, "When are you back from Japan?" I said, "In 30 days. Okay, we'll have a script by then." I said, "In 30 days?
Wow.
Yes." So on my way back from Japan, I stayed a couple of days in Los Angeles. We signed the contract, and a month later,
this is the movie.
I was shooting this movie. Obviously, having an ongoing operation on television, I was able to produce all these very ambitious project in 4 weeks, and then shoot it in like 6 or something like that. So
Lucho, you're not going to believe this. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. Can you believe that my Google Nest started playing music out of the blue there? So give me just 1 second. Hey Google, stop. That's horrible. I'm sorry, Lucho.
I'm not listening to it.
I'm afraid it would disturb the sound. This is a good black and white blooper that we can include like in the full version of the show. He started playing Footloose. I don't know why. This is just crazy. Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, please go on.
So basically, we started a relationship that got to be very long, because I directed a couple of movies for him. After that, I directed David Carradine in a movie, and Sheridan Fenn. At the time, Sheridan Fenn was Johnny Depp's girlfriend. He went down to Peru, and the poor guy had to be in his hotel room because he got poisoned by some ceviche food or whatever. So I directed that, and I also directed Fire on the Amazon with Sandra Bullock. But we've produced like for like 30 movies for Roger in Peru. He liked the production value that we used to put in all this operation. There was a time when he was producing a lot of movies for home video. And
Okay.
so sometimes we will produce 3 or 4 movies a year, like almost non-stop for his operation.
The
And
assassin film that you mentioned is the one with Eric Estrada, right?
yes, it's The Hour of the Assassin with Eric Estrada and Robert Vaughn.
Yes.
Both of them, and I have to say that it was thanks to to the fact that I made the film with Roger Corman in English for the first time. But it was Eric Estrada who said, "You should come and direct in Hollywood. I'm going to help you," and he introduced me to a very important agent from an agency called ICM at the time, Jack
Mhm.
Gilardi. He said, "When you come to Los Angeles, I'll introduce you to him once you have the film put together." So I had a meeting with Jack Gilardi, and Jack Gilardi said, "We definitely want to be in business with you." But my friend, I had a friend that I had worked a long time ago in Dominican Republic in a Friedkin movie. This friend is called Mark Johnson, who got the Academy Award my memory, the film with Dustin Hoffman, and where he plays this autistic guy.
Oh, Rain Man, Tom Cruise and Dustin
Raymond,
Hoffman.
Raymond. He was working. He had a partnership with the famous director Barry Levinson. So he said, "It's great that you're gonna have Jack Gilardi, but he's not gonna give you enough attention because he represents too big people. He has a few of them." So he said, "Let me introduce you to my agents that are CAA people."
Uh-huh.
CAA was also like the most important agency, and Mark Johnson was there. So I found myself, this guy from Peru. I had only directed this movie that was not even finished. I found myself at CAA surrounded by like 8 very young agents trying to convince me not to go to ICM. They said, "We're going to do a great teamwork for you. Come with us." So they really sold themselves very well. And the head of the agency was this guy, famous guy called Mike Ovitz. It was the time when CAA was running the show in Hollywood.
Creative Artists Agency, right?
Creative agents, exactly. So I switched and I went to CAA, and they started setting up meetings, and that's how I ended up directing in Hollywood, because having an agent is crucial. Unless you are Almodovar, unless you are Bertolucci, or
Yeah.
to start directing in Hollywood, uh, you need agents or a very very powerful script. Uh, so
It's
having
because they
agents
created these
makes a
packages,
difference.
right? I believe at that time, I don't know currently, but I believe at that time, Stallone himself was also part of CAA. So I don't know
Yes, he
if it's the
was.
same
Yes, he
time.
was.
Yeah. So
Yes, he
packages.
was. Absolutely. Mike Ovis was almost like the inventor of this packaging, because he represented writers, he represented directors, he represented actors, sometimes producers. So they would package the film, and they get the percentage, the commission from, instead of one, the commission from several. You know,
Yes. Very
so
smart. Smart
they were
man.
very successful with that. Absolutely successful. So CAA made the difference to start doing the networking, to start meeting people. I was very lucky with that, with with the fact that I had something to show, which was this Roger Corman film.
Very interesting. And how do you do with like multicultural? For example, you are this Peruvian guy, and I know you are dealing in Hollywood, for example, with Americans and people from all over the world, Great Britain, European actors and producers. How do you do to deal with like multi-language and multicultural people? I was part of your team during the Pan American Games, and my team, we had a wonderful guy from Australia, we had Americans, we had Brazilians, we had Argentinians, and of course we have Peruvian people. And everybody was like working under your umbrella. How do you manage so many people, different walks of life, different backgrounds? What's your secret?
because when you are working on a project, you have common ground. Is that these people are professionals of the same filmmaking category, of the same job. All the people, you may come from Australia, you may come from any place in the world, but the common ground, the basic thing that you're doing is a film, and filmmaking is not that different any place in the world. There was a time. This is interesting because it was kind of a schizophrenic. I was directing film in Hollywood, and at the same time, my company was producing TV series for like $15,000 an episode or something like that. So, in the in betweens, I would come to Lima, and I always get very involved. I was not directing this TV series, but I get very involved, and I had in my mind, you know, to solve that shot, big cranes, big means. I had to make the switch to just the shot that I was recommending the director or the producer of the TV show uh, uh, couldn't be made with a crane because we didn't have a crane. I had to make the switch, and vice versa. When I was in Hollywood, I was thinking that I had to do that shot with a handheld camera with the guy that said, the DP would say, no, no, Lucho, we have this dolly, we have this crane. It was kind of these two worlds living at the same time in my mind. But to answer your question, I think that this multicultural scene, first of all, is really interesting because the set, the job that you're performing becomes a lot more interesting. You meet people from different parts of the world, and they all have something to put on in the mix. They always have something to put in the mix, as long as there's one leadership, as long as there's one very clear route that everybody follows. But it's not that different, to make films in any place in the world.
Yes, Lucho, I have a question. I recently talked to a very intelligent, talented director called Derek Wayne Johnson, and we were discussing the difficulties, the challenges. For example, when you arrive on set, and of course there is this pressure all over you. The entire crew is looking at you. Where should I place the camera? And I told him a funny story. I don't remember now which director it was, but the guy would just arrive on set and say, look, let's use this lens, put the camera here, point in that direction. And then after everybody started working, he removed the pressure from his shoulders, all this burden. And then he would like sit down and, okay, now let me see what to do. Because everybody would be busy. And then he would just figure out what he really wanted. And it's easier to tell people, look, let's move the camera from here to there, then just arrive on set and be with everybody like looking at you and asking what to do. You mentioned that you have this technique of preparing yourself a lot, visiting the locations before. What was a challenging thing or one of the most difficult scenes you needed to cope with adversity, or it was a complicated shot? Do you have like a favorite scene because it was difficult?
Well, I understand what you say. It was intimidating, for instance, when I directed The Specialist in Miami, arrive on the set, and several blocks of the city were closed for the trucks, for the trailers, for all this huge operation that is on your shoulders. It is a little bit intimidating, sometimes more than dealing with these sacred cows, as they say, was the
Yeah.
fact that it was such a huge operation. It was a very expensive movie. It was $50 million at the time, which would be like 120 or 150 today. So that was intimidating. And it's true what you say. You get to the set and you have 100 people just waiting, looking at you, so that you open your mouth and they start moving and they start preparing things. uh, being prepared to go to the set is important, so you don't feel that pressure having everybody doing their job because you already told them what to do. It's true that takes a little bit of the pressure, instead of having 100 eyes looking at you and waiting just in dead silence. you know that's, by the way, one difference that I found in American movies in Hollywood vis-a-vis Latin American experiences that I've had, is that in Latin America, crews are not that focused always. Crews sometimes forget the fact that you have to be only working for the next shot. They tend to be a little distracted. They tend to, no. In Hollywood, everything I would say, you're not allowed in Hollywood to do what you say, just talking to myself or brainstorming, because whatever you say is going to be written in stone, and they do it.
Okay.
It's a different dynamic between the director and the crew. It's like the director becomes, the priest. So whatever you say is going to be followed really by the letter. You cannot allow yourself to any kind of this brainstorming, this maybe thinking aloud, because they are already really focused in waiting for what you have to say and do it. In Latin America, there's a tendency to be a little more destructive. Uh, uh, it's in Hollywood. You have this atmosphere that becomes a lot more serious, a lot more kind of how to call it. Like a ceremony,
Yeah.
like more sacred. It's like you are in mass. You cannot talk just to talk.
I
It's
understand. I understand. But
yeah.
once I was talking to a Brazilian director, Fernando Meirelles, and we were discussing the differences now, and he had an idea about this. I'm going to explain myself. Because in the past, when directors were using film, películas, um, if you have a big budget, that's okay. You just keep burning the film, right? Keep
Right.
it rolling. But with digital, what happens is that you can have like more takes. It's not going to increase a lot the cost of production, except of course if you extend the time to make a scene perfect. And then Fernando Meirelles mentioned to me, you know what? I give them 3 takes, because people have this idea, oh, because it's not film and it's digital, we can try like 20 takes of the same thing. How do you deal with this? And of course, you have experienced a lot of both worlds, the analogic, the film, and the digital world now. Do you think there was a difference in your approach concerning this fact?
Well, certainly there was a difference between making low budget films for Roger Corman, where the film was not in abundance. When I was in Hollywood, you just burn rolls and rolls of film, doesn't matter. When I was making these lower budget films for Roger before the video era, we were shooting film. We were shooting film, so we had to be very cautious with how many takes. But nowadays there is the tendency, there is it's true, the temptation to do innumerable shots because you have it there. You just keep on doing, and it's not going to add the cost, except that you have a schedule, a schedule to fulfill for the day. That's what dictates mostly how much time you take in one scene or in the other. Obviously, if there's something really not working and you have to keep on going to take number 10, you have to do it. But then on the next scene, you have to realize that part of the time of the day has been consumed. Then you have to be more conservative, and you have to be, really focused on the next scene, on what is really important, and how to shoot it in a very economical way without wasting time. It becomes a trade of how to manage your day. Uh, but if I have to give an average of the shows I do, is between 2 and 4, more or less, between 2 and 4. Lately, I've been shooting with second units because in Dominican Republic there's a fantastic movie law, but normally they only approve like 4 weeks, and I had these very ambitious projects. So what I did is have Andrea, that you met in Lima, do second unit, but not just as a second camera for coverage. Do entire scenes with sound, with actors. So I do a shooting schedule where I choose what I'm going to direct and what I'm going to give the second unit,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise in 4 weeks would have been impossible. So you have to rely, and then always what I would do is, while I was preparing the next scene, go and watch what they're doing, because we were shooting in the same area. So, but it's basically a trade-off with yourself. You know, I want to give myself a more complicated staging. Sometimes, a sequence has been designed in a more complex way, and it takes time because it's just one shot that goes all over the place. If something goes wrong, you have to repeat the entire shot. But if you want to do it, then you have to be clear. You have to be conscious that then on the next scene you have to go just for the basics, because you consume part of your valuable time.
So it becomes kind of a trade, right? For example, in the past, the concern would be like spending a lot of money on film, the película itself. And
Yeah,
now
yeah,
the
yeah.
thing is, because you don't have this cost, but you have the time and you can't buy
Ab-
time
ab-
back, right? This is a problem. It's interesting what you mentioned, that they are filming not just background with the second unit, but entire scenes. Because in a way, you are giving a lot of opportunity to new directors to test their ability to follow your directions, and it has become something interesting. Lots of, for example, stunt coordinators that got promoted to second unit directors and eventually become directors. For example, Chad Stahelski, he was a stuntman for the Matrix. He was stuntman for Keanu Reeves, and then he was also the stunt coordinator, and now he's directing John Wick. He's directing Keanu Reeves again. And well, you are maybe creating a school of new directors with this model, this business model that you have of letting people doing things, just following your directions, but very hands-on. Lucho, I have a question, a hard one, and we are going to try to wrap up here. And it's a hard one because I know it's tough answering something like this, because all your projects, I am sure you treat them as your babies. But if you had to select one or two projects that are very close to your heart, which project or which scene you are really proud of?
Well, um, I think that of all my Hollywood films, I would keep Sniper. Sniper, the one with Tom Berenger. You know that's a franchise. They have done Sniper numbers 9, or they
I
are.
know, and I love them all, but the first one is the best. I love that. I love this film. Oh my God. I remember when I was a kid and I was watching this thing, and the thing about the finger, and it's Tom Berenger and it's Billy Zane, right?
Yes, 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 yes. It's interesting because I had a debate. Mike Metaboy was the head of production at Columbia at the time. This was TriStar and Columbia Pictures, and when he saw a rough cut, he said this movie is unreleasable because of the violence. There's a torture scene when they cut the scene, and also in the original version, Tom Berenger dies. It's the famous phrase, one shot, two kills, is to have Billy Zane kill the guy, the bad guy, and also Tom Berenger. One shot, two kills. And that's the way I shot it. But then Columbia and Mike Metaboy had second thoughts. First of all, they wanted me to downgrade to downgrade the violence of the torture scene. And that was really hard for me because it was like, changing the movie. And also, they wanted Tom Berenger to live. They wanted a happy ending, maybe because they were thinking about sequels already. But
Of course.
I never forget how hard it was for me in my first Hollywood film. We screened the film for the the people at Columbia, and Mike Metaboy was there. We go to an office to discuss, and he says this movie is unreleasable. As you can imagine, I couldn't sleep that night. But obviously, he had seen the potential of the film, and that's why, well, the film became number one in box office for a couple of weeks in the United States. But he probably thought, commercially wise, this this movie could be duplicated. We could have Sniper 2 or maybe Sniper 3, whatever. So they didn't want Tom Berenger to die. What I did is I bought the rights for Peru, and I changed because Colombia would distribute it, but in some areas they would sell it to sub-sell it to distributors. I bought it from the Latin American distributor, and what I did is I changed the ending to the original ending.
Oh
At
my
least
God.
that was my small revenge. I remember Mike Metaboy calling me. I was already in Lima when the movie was number one, and he would say a phrase like this: "Lucho is great. You see how what we've done with the film." I didn't, I didn't know how to answer that, but in my mind was, yeah, yeah, you ruined my film. It became commercially, you know, but it's not the film that I had in my mind. But anyway, it was a lesson. It was a lesson in Hollywood, style, that obviously they're gonna do what they're gonna do. Same in the specialist. I had to cut a scene where Eric Roberts and that was in the script. Eric Roberts and Sharon Stone make love, and
Oh,
Stallone said, it was scene that I was really proud of visually, and it was very intense because she was making love to the guy that had killed her parents. So it had a lot of tension. It was really interesting. But
yes.
Stallone said that either we cut that scene out or he wouldn't do any publicity for the movie. And
Oh,
what was the real reason? The reason he gave, which was absurd for a guy that in some cases had proven himself to be so good. He's the guy that had written the Rocky script, right? The
yes.
reason he gave is that it was not good that the love interest of the protagonist would make love with another guy. Of course, that's a macho remark. Somebody told me that maybe it was another reason. It was that Eric Roberts was really, really in shape. He was, he had a great body. He was in shape. And Sly was jealous that somebody would not only match, but even look better than his
Yeah.
physicality.
I
But
remember Eric Roberts. He was really
so
buffed up.
between
He was.
between between my complaints, and and Stallone's power in Hollywood, Warner Brothers asked me to cut the scene out. Of course, I had to cut it out. So those were lessons in Hollywood, style. Uh, uh, so it was two experiences that were painful in a way, but I had to accept them. That's why I got a little tired of all these pressures in Hollywood, and I went ahead to do uh, uh, other films. So to answer your question, was the other favorite one that I consider more personal is Feast of the Goat, where I had better ways to put my own input. It's a more personal film. It's based on existing material, on a novel by Vargas Llosa, but I think I put a little bit more of myself. If I have to choose one scene that that was the most difficult in my whole career, but in a way has become a scene that I'm proud of, is the moment when Trujillo is in bed, is raping this very young girl, uh,
Oh,
Uranita. It's a crucial scene. I kept on pushing and pushing and pushing that scene, and that was the last scene that I shot in the movie. It's a scene that I was really nervous and afraid of. I kept on pushing it, and I got to shoot it the 2 last days of the shoot in an interior in Spain. So there you go. Those are my two sniper.
Dave,
I I sniper. I have it's like my first baby, and then in a more personal way, I like Feast of the Goat, and that scene in particular is something that was the most difficult scene in my entire career, but I think I got away with it.
nice, very nice. Just as a reference, because some people don't know this, when you say one shot, 2 kills, is because the snipers, they have this motto, they have this thing they follow. It's like 1 shot, 1 kill, and you broke the rule. 1 shot,
Eh,
2 kills.
Yes, the idea is that Berenger puts his head right in front of the other guy so that the bullet will go across both heads, his and the other guys.
Very nice, very nice. Lucho, my God, we could be chatting here forever, forever. And I have to invite you for a second round where we can discuss more things. We are reaching now more than 1 hour that we have been chatting here. I don't like calling this an interview, and this is more like an informal chat, but you have so much to share, and these curiosities, the backstage things that are happening but never go out for the average Joe and the fans. Thank you so much for your input. In advance, I'm already inviting you here, and I would like to ask you just to leave, because a lot of people that is watching our show, they are fans of films. Some of them aspiring filmmakers or actors, directors. So I would like you to leave some words of encouragement, because this is not easy. Becoming a guy that is prolific in a career in a very competitive business and very competitive industry is very difficult. What would be your advice to people that are trying to have their break or trying to start in a career like this?
Well, first of all, like I said, go out and do it. Do it. When I was very young, I wanted to make films, and I was part of a film community. I was a film critic in my own time. Uh, some of my friends would really criticize me because I started directing what I had to eat. I started directing also soap operas and stuff like that, and they would criticize me. But let me tell you, even even the scenes that I shot for soap operas when I became a Hollywood director was really useful as an exercise. Everything is an experience that will later be useful. So don't lose opportunities. Whatever opportunity you have to direct, to write, to be part of a film, you have to go out there and do it, or just grab, if you have a story, if you have something you want to tell, or even a book, a short story that you read and you want to transform it into a visual piece, just go out there and do it with your telephones. But do it. Go out there and do it. That's my basic advice. Sure.
Yes, well, it comes from experience. And you said, I have to, not to correct you, but to add something that you mentioned in the beginning. You said, oh, I was lucky, when you mentioned Roger Corman coming after you and knocking at your door. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. He was the opportunity, but as you said, just go out and do it. You had something to show. If you didn't have anything to show him, the opportunity would never arise, and then you wouldn't be able to call yourself lucky. Lucho, thank you so much. And
My pleasure.
yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity of having this conversation with you. Again, you are already invited anytime you want to come and talk, discuss new projects and your new ventures. I know we could talk a lot about sports. I know you are very involved in sports as well. Anyway, this is a good cliffhanger for another opportunity for a new chat, and I'm sure people are going to be thrilled with this. Thank you very much for the time. To all the viewers, this is InterAction, and as you know, we have action in the DNA. We have action in our name. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.